Guys, it's Fonzie with DipYourCar.com. This is episode number 2 of the Dip Your Car Dipping Industry Podcast. With me, as always, is Adam. We're going to be covering a couple really cool topics this episode. We first of all have an interview with one of the industry's leading installers, Richard Warner Jr. from Vancouver. He's the owner and the operator of the Car Skin. Very excited to talk to that guy. He does a couple things differently than a lot of other installers out there, and I think there's some installers that can really get some value out of hearing what he has to say. We're also going to be covering a very hot topic, which is what's going on in the world of dip moving into California. And I'm telling you straight up, we're going to touch on that topic, and we're going to give you as much info, or at least as much of an understanding of what's going on as we possibly can. And then one of the most requested banks of information, I guess you could say, since the beginning of when we started this company is people want to know the story of how Dip Your Car got started and how we got to essentially a garage to where we are now. So we're going to tell you guys that story finally. Adam, I've known you for a long time. We've been friends for a while now. You were there with me, way before I even started. You knew me before I even started Dip Your Car. So you've been a witness to this entire story. You've seen it go from A to Z.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was really amazing how it started and where it's grown to pioneering the industry and leading the industry. So why don't you take us through the steps? I mean, I was there when you were running it out of your garage at your house, but I think people really want to know, and we touched on it a little bit last week, but from point A to maybe not where we are today, because it's obviously just grown
right.
After a certain instance, but at least walk us through the beginning of it.
Yeah, basically what had happened was in 2010, I had gotten new wheels for my car. And I had the stock wheels sitting in my garage, and I was just kind of running around. I always like to play with stuff, tinker with stuff, and I never really had a stock car. I always modified cars from a cosmetic point of view and an engine performance point of view. So I had these stock wheels sitting on my garage floor. I grabbed essentially what I thought was a can of black spray paint. I wanted to see what my stock wheels would look like black, just so I had a little bit more of an option to go back and forth. So I sprayed 3 or 4 coats of the paint on my wheels. I let it be. I came out the next day and I'm like, you know what? They look pretty good. I was playing with one of the edges of the wheel. I started to roll it back, and it started to release off the face of the wheel.
And what do you think then?
I thought, what a crappy brand of spray paint. So I look at the label and I'm thinking, this stuff doesn't even stick. It doesn't, what kind of spray paint is this?
Right.
So I started to peel it. I started to roll it off, and I'm like, geez, is this thing going to completely remove from the face of this wheel? And it peeled off perfectly clean. And then my gears in my head started turning. I didn't really understand what I was looking at, or I didn't know how I felt about it.
Right.
So I took the other 3 wheels that I had, and I threw them out into my backyard. I left them there for a little over 2 weeks. Went out there one day, and I remembered that they were there, and I pulled them back in. And the reason why I threw them out there is I wondered, is this stuff really doing this because it's the next day? Or is this going to peel off after a while?
Mm-hmm.
I peeled the dip off the face of the wheels. After 2 weeks, it peeled off perfectly clean. And then it was just like a cartoon. Literally a light bulb clicked in my head. I stood up and I was like, is this essentially a removable paint? Can I use this on my car? My brain started going a million miles an hour.
Right.
So back then you could get Plasti-Dip cans at a couple of retail stores. They probably carried 3 to 4 cans at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So I drove about 2 hours from store to store to store, and I gathered about 13 cans. Brought them back to my house, and I started spraying everything. I went on a 2-week binge. I started spraying every different part of my car. I sprayed the wheels. I sprayed the stock wheels. I sprayed the wheels that were on my car. I started spraying emblems. I sprayed racing stripes, which looked terrible. I sprayed all these different things on my car, and I was peeling it off. And back then, I was a really big active member of the Audi forums. So of course, I'm sharing these projects, and people are just bashing me daily. The threads that I would put up would just be littered with people trashing me. Why are you putting that stuff on your car? What are you doing? You ruined your car. Way to ruin an Audi. I mean, it was Flame City.
It's crazy.
All day long. And for some reason, it didn't bother me a bit. I didn't give a crap what these people were saying because all I was doing was obsessing over the fact that I can change the color of different parts of my car and peel it right back off. There was no consequence to it. And I obviously I had a career back then. I worked as a vice president of sales and marketing for an insurance firm for about 9 years. And I was in the middle of the workday one day, bored, staring off out of a window and realizing, you know what, I wonder if I can make this a business. I wonder if Plastidip even knows that there's an opportunity here. So I called up Plastidip, and the operator gave me to the sales manager and had a conversation with the sales manager. I said, do you guys have any idea that your product can be used in the automotive market? She said, look, we understand that there could be some potential there, but we don't work in the automotive industry. We don't have any hand in the automotive industry. If this is something you want to do, if this is something you think you can do, you know what? Build a business plan, build a company, build a website, and then if you get all that done, come back to me. And I could tell in her voice she was just dismissing me. Mm-hmm. And I've actually spoken to her about this recently, and I knew I was going to tell this story. I actually called and asked if I can have her on the show to interview her about the experience. So we relived it together yesterday. Mm-hmm. And she said, listen, when you called me and you asked for a distribution contract, you were a 20-something-year-old kid. You had no money. You had no capital for inventory. You had no backing of a bank. You had no company. You had no warehouse. She's like, we work with industrial suppliers. This kid calls up. She's like, I give you this laundry list of stuff to do, and I tell you to go do it, and I think I'm never going to hear from you again.
How long did it take you until she heard from you again?
She gave me that laundry list, and I went on like a 4-day binge of literally almost no sleep. And I didn't know how to build a website. I was looking at online video tutorials. I went through about a 4-day binge of registering the company name, getting the trademarking done, building the entire website out. And then I came back to her. I talked to her on a Monday. I came back to her on a Friday. I finally got her on the phone. I said, do you remember me? She said, I don't really know. I said, listen, you gave me this list. I want you to log on to my site right now. It's called DipYourCar.com. She's like, all right, let me see. She logs onto the site. I fax her and email her all the documents, and you can hear in her voice, she was like, what's really going on? She told me yesterday, she's like, I definitely didn't expect you to get this done. So she's like, you know what I did is I gave you another list of stuff that you'd never be able to get done.
Right.
Specifically about getting the certification done to handle hazardous materials, getting a fire marshal to sign off on what your plans are, and then you can come back to me, and then we'll talk about getting you some product. So in the meantime, I've got all these people emailing me, messaging me, calling me about all the projects that I started doing on the Audi forums, because it slowly turned from people hating on the projects to starting to ask questions. Hey, does that really work on wheels? How long does it last? Where can I get it? Do you have any other colors? How does it work? They were bombarding me with questions. So, and that was really what was fueling the fire of, I've got to turn this into something. I've got to capitalize on this some way. So long story short, I got a bunch of shelving done in my garage. I converted a couple things. I actually got the Coral Springs, Florida fire marshal over to the garage and actually was signing off on my ability to store a small amount of hazardous materials there for shipping. I don't know what he was doing that day, if he just wanted to go home, but we talked through it. I explained to him what I wanted to do. He signed the form. I got that stuff back to Plastidip 2 days later, and every conversation I had with them after that was a struggle, because you could tell there were pieces of her voice that understood the passion behind what I was saying, understood the perseverance, the fact that I bugged her multiple times a day, the fact that I was following up on everything she wanted me to follow up on. She understood there was no quit there, that right. I was this weird, unstoppable force that was going to do this no matter what. Right. But she kept giving me these obstacles to have an appropriate way to slow me down.
Right.
Long story short, I get a distribution contract. We start stocking Plastidip in my garage. My first purchase order, I'll never forget, it was for $168. It was 2 cases of black aerosol, 1 case of red aerosol, and 1 case of white aerosol. That was our entire inventory.
How long after that did you start doing videos and things of that nature?
Well, what we did is once we got that inventory in, I realized I've got to get this out there. And one of the biggest pieces to the puzzle was I have to make sure people understand that this is something that they can do and it's something that works. So we did our first YouTube video. My brother had his digital camera. I don't even think cell phones had good cameras back then for video. He took his digital camera. People know this, had no shoes on, no socks. I took a white t-shirt and actually plasti dipped the stencil name Dip Your Car on the back of the t-shirt. And we did a video of doing some emblems. And it's funny because I thought I had a real badass YouTube account before, because I used to take these videos of my car exhausts. I used to do these custom exhausts and do videos.
I remember those.
You remember?
Yep.
So one video would have like 7,000 views after 6 months. And I'm like, yeah, kind of a YouTube sensation. And I remember putting the video for the emblems up. And overnight we had like 2,300 views. So the next day, I don't know what's going on. I thought YouTube broke or something. I was like, how is this possible? The next day, another 4,000 or 5,000, and it started to build virally. People were sharing it. They were sending it around. And I was like, all right, videos might be a big piece to this puzzle. So we started doing these videos, and people started to really latch onto them and watch them. And I started to realize, okay, this is the way to tell people how to do it. This is the way to show people how to do it. As we started to pick up a little bit of steam, it was the website was live. We were getting 2 orders a day, and then 5 orders a day, and then 10 orders a day, and it started to build up steam. We started to do, start the social media. We had the Facebook going, the YouTube. We were doing videos every week. After a while, we were sending all of our orders out of my garage. So I worked full time. I would come home at 8 o'clock at night, and I would pack orders from, once we started getting some volume, I'd pack orders from 9 o'clock after dinner till 2, 3 in the morning.
I mean, I remember coming over your house and seeing boxes in that corner and packing peanuts hanging from the ceiling, right, and printing out labels, and it was crazy. It was pretty much a one-man show.
Yeah, and it completely took over my entire house. And Brad was there back then working with me, and he was doing some invoicing and stuff. But everything was out of the headquarters of my garage. And we got to the point where a car couldn't go in the garage anymore, and then we realized we need more shelves. So we went from the garage to a 10 by 10 storage unit, and we ran the company out of a storage unit. Then we went to a 20 by 30 storage unit. And then we looked around, we're like, okay, we have to make a choice. I realized that at that point, it's gotten to be this kind of a monster that we created.
And I actually remember that happening, and we were working out the one day at the gym, and I hadn't realized how big the company was getting, and we're working out, and I said, so Fonzie, what long term, you obviously can't juggle your 9-to-5 job and this company that's building and building and building. Long-term scenario, how long do you think until you have to put in your 2 weeks notice and put all your eggs into this Dip Your Car basket? And you said, well, you know what? Best case scenario, probably 2 years, maybe if I'm lucky, a year and a half. And 2 weeks later, you said, hey, listen, bro, I put in my 2 weeks. I'm going to be down in South Florida. We're not going to be able to work out anymore. And that's when you kind of moved into the retail center, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened. I really thought, you know what, if I can do this full time, even just supporting myself in about a year, that'd be a huge win. And I started crunching numbers, and I started looking at space and the way that the company was expanding. I had to sit down and run those numbers and say, you know what, I got to make a choice. And it was one of those things where every single person, more or less, was telling me you're crazy to take that idea. I made very good money at that job. I've been there 9 years. I had a huge career path ahead of me. To walk away from that for essentially an idea that was just starting to blossom was crazy. I remember I spoke to 2 people that specifically freaked out when I told them I was going to quit. One was my mom. Just, this was her response: no, 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 and that was it. No. Eventually just hung up. And the second person was the sales manager at Plastidip. I called her and I said, hey, guess what happened? What? I quit my job. She said, why? And I was like, well, I'm going to be doing Dip Your Car full time. She said, oh no, you can't. And I was like, why? What are you talking about? We've been doing great. She's like, did I encourage you to do this? I remember her taking almost like a feeling of responsibility about it. And I had a conversation, had a heart to heart with her. I said, listen, sometimes in life you get an opportunity. Sometimes people take them and sometimes they don't. I may never have another opportunity like this. So I can either stay on the path I'm on and always wonder what would have happened, or I can take the opportunity and see where it goes.
I remember you having that exact, literally word for word with me at the gym and saying, you know, I have to take this opportunity.
And you know what? As kind of a fail-safe, I was so sick of working in that corporate environment. I'd always kind of wanted to be an Audi salesman anyway. So if this didn't work, it was just kind of my way of thinking, well, this is the path that brought me to go sell cars, to go sell Audis, which, you know, luckily I didn't go down that road, but that's where we got to. And then, you know, we went from that storage facility to another storage unit, and then we ended up going into the retail center, which is still there. We still have that retail center in Coral Springs. We just sell Plasti Dip out of it. We film our videos there. And we actually ran the shipping department out of the back of there. We went from there to our first warehouse, which was about 4,000 square feet, and then into 18,000 square feet, and then 25, and now we're in our new facility, which is just a little over 42,000 square feet. So that was how we went from essentially an idea, discovery, and, you know, basically passion led the way for everything else, and just having a little bit of faith and taking a chance. And it was, I said this, I got interviewed from the Star Tribune, a newspaper up in Minnesota, the other day, because they were doing a story on Plasti Dip. And this is what I told the reporter. I said, I look at it as a winning lottery ticket, because how many ideas out there are turn into something this big that you get to put your entire life into? You get to support your own family. You get to support, we have 38 employees now, so the families of all of our employees. It's like you win a lotto ticket.
And not only that, it's an industry that you loved. It's not like you won the lottery and you're, you know, mass producing bottled water. You're always been a car guy. You're doing something that directly ties into something that you love.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about the lottery ticket. I don't mean that in a financial way. I mean it in a lucky way, that I do get to do something that I'm obsessed about and that I love on a daily basis, and I have so much fun with it. And it's the weirdest balance, because I worked hard at that insurance firm. Right now, the past 3 years is by far the hardest I've ever worked in my life, but the entire time I've felt like I haven't had a job, because it's such a different lifestyle.
That's ultimately the goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm very, and this is why I take everything so seriously. This is why I work so hard to stay in touch with all the fans and the customers on Facebook, and to reply to the messages and reply to the notifications, as many as there are, and all those things, because I feel like I have this opportunity and I have to make not only the best of it that I possibly can, but I have to be as grateful as I possibly can too. And it means a lot to me. If somebody cares about what I'm doing enough to send me a message on Facebook, then I care enough to message them back, because I'm just lucky enough to have that interaction. So at this point, you guys know that we're looking forward to a very big 2015. So we went from A to B, and there's a lot more coming, and, you know, the story will continue.
One of the questions that we get inundated with all the time.
Every day.
And actually, it's unfortunate, because we'll have people place orders, and we'll have to give them a call or shoot them an email and say, listen, unfortunately, we can't at this time ship gallon product to California. So I think it's only natural that we should probably talk about that on today's DipCast.
Yeah, that's a touchy subject. And the reason why it's touchy is because there are things about it. Essentially, what people want is flat answers. They want to know, why can't I get gallons, and when can I get gallons?
Right.
So I can touch on this. You know, there's some political pieces to it. You know, there's also things that I want to respect from Plasti Dip's point of view, because when they're working on something and there's things going on, there's things that I can talk about, and there's things that I have to respect and not talk about. So right now, everybody has to understand that the reason why we can't send gallons to California is it's an environmental or a VOC issue. There's specific regulations from a compliance point of view, from a regulation point of view. There's products that can come in, and they're VOC compliant, and they're fine, and there's products that can't. A gallon of Plasti Dip does not meet the VOC requirements for California. So people are going to ask, well, First of all, can I use spray cans to dip my car? And I will be the first person to tell you that I've done it and it sucks, and I suggest that you don't. So taking spray cans off the table, these people still want to dip their cars. And the last thing we want to do is have a group of passionate people that want to use our product and we can't get it to them. Sometimes I'll see comments, whether it's in the forums or Facebook, and some people will say, man, F it, Fonzie doesn't even care about Cali anymore. From a businessman point of view, are you crazy? You know how many people are in California? Do you know how many, from a pure business point of view, how much product we can move in California? So from a business person point of view, of course I care about California. From a personal point of view, absolutely. If there's somebody passionate about and excited about using one of our products, I want to get the product to them. I want them to be able to dip their car and enjoy it. So we go from spray cans to, well, why can't you sell quarts? Right. Sell me something less than a gallon, and I'll just dump a bunch of quarts in a bucket, and I'll do that. That, again, isn't the easiest thing in the world to do. It's possible. But when you go to a new product, you have new SKUs, you have new packaging, you have new labeling, you have new compliance and regulations to do, you have new filing to do. Not only that, but the pricing. I promise you one thing. If I brought quarts of PDS to market, there's going to be people that immediately get excited, and then when they see the price of them, immediately bitch. Because when you're talking about that much product going into smaller containers, you have to pay, essentially from a manufacturing point of view and a distribution point of view, each quart can is going to cost money. The labeling is going to cost money. The packaging is going to cost money. So if you buy a gallon for $59.74 and you buy 4 quart cans, it's not going to be $59.74. So from a pricing model point of view, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Is it possible? I'm sure it's possible. What I'd rather do, though, is come out with a resolution or solution that works. And to me, what works is a reformulated low VOC gallon that is compliant in California. That to me is the solution. The issue with that, or the holdup with that, at least, and I'm going to speak to DipYourCar's point of view. I can't speak for PlastiDip. From DipYourCar's point of view, the holdup on that is, you know me and you know how I feel about long-term testing. If I have a low VOC gallon that's put in front of me, and somebody, say PlastiDip gave me the opportunity to say, hey, what do you think about this? I am not going to see a low VOC gallon that sprays pretty good and say this could be huge for us and throw it onto the shelves. Just like PlastiDip, the product has to work. It has to be reliable and has to be exactly what we would want our customers to receive. So if I did potentially get a low VOC version of PDS, for example, I'm going to use it, and I'm going to use it for a long time, and I'm going to leave it on a car, and I'm going to peel it off that car, and I'm going to wash that car, and I'm going to do everything I would do as if that product was going to end up on my personal car. So again, speaking for DipYourCar, we can't send gallons to California today. But in my opinion, if we were able to come out with a low VOC compliant gallon for California in 2015, I think that would be the road to take. And that's about as far as I can take that. And honestly, that goes for Canada as well. So who we have on the phone with us right now, this is an authorized DipYourCar installer. This is a guy who's in the dipping community. He's been around for a long time. Honestly, not only a guy who puts out some of the most professional looking dip jobs out there, also one of the most respectful and polite dudes on the internet, which is a hard thing to find. We have Richard Warner Jr. From Vancouver, Washington, the owner and operator of the Car Skin. Richard, you there?
Yes, how's it going, guys?
Good, man. Good. It's a pleasure to have you on. We wanted to have you on for a couple reasons. First and foremost, you're a 3-time winner of the Featured Installer of the Month contest. Those things get heated. You have to really put your best foot forward to win those things. To win them 3 times, and not only that, but you actually won 2 months back-to-back the past 2 months, which nobody, I don't think, has ever done before. That's a pretty big accomplishment.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's all part of just taking your time with the work, and you kind of got to represent it as if, you know, each project is really important to you. It means a lot to the customer. It means a lot to you and your business and how you represent and show yourself. You know, and the big thing is taking quality pictures. I see a lot of people out there take cell phone pictures of some really good work, you know. But if you can get a hold of a decent camera, you know, we use a Canon T3i, and I'm by no means a photographer or anything like that, but
that's one of the things that I really wanted to touch on with you, because we've got a lot of people that do a lot of dip jobs out there. But when you're going ahead and you're putting that work out there for the entire world to see, the only bridge between yourself and the internet is that camera and are those pictures. And and I want to touch on the clientele that you have in a moment, because you seem to get a lot of higher end cars in there. But to touch on the picture thing, I say it on the dipping forums and in the Facebook groups, and I can't stress this enough. A lot of people will reach out to me and say, Fonzie, I'm an authorized installer. I'm not getting as much traction as I want. I don't see as much projects that you guys are doing being shared as much as I like. What do you think I'm missing on? The thing that I say to them every time is that you've got to take a look at the quality of your pictures. You can't just snap a cell phone camera in bad lighting with bad framing and expect that to carry your work through. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll point them to a couple different installers out there and say, check out their work, take a look at their pictures, and then you're going to understand the difference. You're definitely one of the guys that I showcase every single time you guys do a dip job. You come up with these professional, high-quality images, and what that does is it gives us ammunition to expose your work, promote your work, and do our job to help you guys grow.
Exactly, yeah. So, we spend so much time as just creating these projects, taking them apart. We pay attention to all the detail to make them just perfect for our customers. And a cell phone shot isn't quite cutting it. You need to have that high def, that quality picture, so you can really see the detail. People can really appreciate all the work you put into it. And like you were saying, not only is it just good for the installers, but it's good for the industry and the community as well.
Yeah, it really is. And you'll understand that when you look through your albums on your on your Facebook group or your Facebook page and on your website, and you bring these cars after they're finished. They're obviously prepped properly. We see you guys tearing apart R8 bumpers and things like that. You do the prep work, and you take them to different areas. You get the landscaping done. You get the background in the right place. You get the car framed up. But to confirm to everybody out there, because there's definitely installers that are going to be listening to this going, yeah, but I don't have a photography background. I don't have a ton of money to spend on a camera. If you were going to take a guy who puts his heart and soul into his installation projects, and you're going to help him tell his story of his dip jobs better, what would you tell them? What kind of camera would you suggest? How much should they really budget for that? And do you have any of the photography experience?
I have zero photography experience. Now, I've just, like everybody else, just use my cell phone for everything. But, you could tell just like from the engagement on our social media pages to how people react to them when we show our customers. And I would say, budget for $400 to $600, $700 for a camera. Really, if you're doing this as a business, you can basically cover it with 1 to 2 cars.
Sure.
So, like I said, we bought it off of Amazon for about $5.99. I think it is a really high def quality camera, and I just throw them up on my computer. I do a little bit of editing. I throw our logo in there a little bit too, just kind of add that flair to it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
that really comes across because the professional shots come out and we have people that actually ask us, hey, what are the guys from the Carskin doing? Do they hire a photographer to come in? And another thing I wanted to touch with you, and I mentioned it a moment ago, you seem to have a good handful of high-end cars come across your desk. You've done the R8s, you've done Ferraris. Is that about where you are locally? Do you have friend connections to that? Because as an installer, it really helps push your business if you can prove that your work can be done on these high-end cars. It gives the customer the confidence to be able to work on those mid-range and lower-end cars. How do you get your hands on these higher-end exotic cars?
We did have a couple of connections at first. It was from a buddy. It was a guy with the Ferrari. That was the original, first high-end car we ever really did. So he told me to text his boss, and I gave him a shout, and he said, hey, I got a Range Rover I want you to do for my wife, and, I might have a Ferrari here for you guys too. And I was like, awesome, cool. So what we did, we just spent our time on that Range Rover. We spent, I think it was 4 days even, just doing the pearl white.
Right.
And we brought it back to him, and he was just blown away.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, it's the real detailed stuff, and it's looking as professional as possible. So you really concentrate on your website. You don't want to just have like a domain name that shoots directly over to your Facebook page necessarily. Right. You can have a website. You can build it yourself at like Wix.com.
Right.
It's like $30 a month, and you can create all your content on there. You can show all your colors, all your work, information, all that good stuff, and just looking professional as possible.
Yeah, that's a big piece to the puzzle because, again, there's going to be a lot of installers that listen to this podcast, and there's a small group of installers that would say, yes, I'm doing the amount of business per month that I want to do. Everybody wants to do more business. What's different about the dipping industry, in my opinion, is that it really attracted a younger demographic of people. It's a bunch of males, say 18 to 35, that say, you know what, I can do this for a business. I can do it for a living. And then they do some cars, they get it out there, and then they wonder where the holes are. They wonder where that is. But as an installer, I'm sure that you think about this like from the time that a customer sees your website or your social media to the time that they get an email in or a phone call in, who speaks to them on the phone, what kind of response they get via email, what kind of experience they get when they walk through your door, the way they meet you, the way you're dressed. I mean, think about it. If you're dropping your personal vehicle off to somebody that you don't know to put a coating on your car that you probably don't know a lot about, they have to have confidence in that to hand those keys over.
Yeah, that's so true. So, I mean, customers are judging you from the first second they see your name. Not only that, but I mean, your website, again, your clothes, how they're seeing you, and how you respond to them, or how they see you responding to people on like social media. So we engage a lot. People comment a lot on our pictures or ask questions. We'll put emotion into our responses. We act like we're friends.
Right.
You get close to them. You kind of build that relationship, build that trust, show them your work, show them how awesome it is, and then, get a sale.
And right now, you've been doing this a while. You've been steady. We obviously track everybody's product flow. What would you say is bringing in, what are a couple of the avenues where people are coming to you? How are they finding you? Where's your traffic coming from?
It's definitely from DipYourCar.com. The website itself, being installers, the fee for that is nothing compared to what you get. I mean, you get a ton of stuff from just the whole support from you guys, and I get a lot of it sent straight through your website to my website, and it's all like email. Mm-hmm. We do have a 188 number set up, and it's actually fairly inexpensive, and it's just sent right to my cell phone, actually. And we don't get a whole lot of calls, but again, that's just that level of professionalism. People see this 1-800 number there rather than, the guy that's down the street that's just got hardly a website set up and his cell phone set on this thing. He's asking you to text him for a quote.
Right.
So
exactly.
you want to have that professional avenue to get those quotes too, and not just send me a text for a quick quote or message me on Facebook for a quote.
Yeah, it's all about that professional experience. It's really about, as an installer, just like any business, how many opportunities are going to be put in front of you, and how many of those can you convert into a sale? It's a numbers game, just like anything else. And, you're over there in Vancouver, Washington. You're doing a ton of high-end dip jobs. There's going to be people listening to this in that area that want to use you for their services. So how can somebody get in touch with you if they want to do business with the Carskin?
If anybody wants to get a hold of us, whether it be local or even across the country, guys, feel free to visit us at thecarskin.com. You can call us at 1-888-415-0040. or email us directly at service@thecarskin.com, and we'll respond to you as soon as we can.
Well, you know what, dude? Like I said in the beginning, you're absolutely class act every single time that I either see on the internet or we interact with you. You've got a polite, professional character down, and I really hope it brings you a ton of success in the future.
Awesome. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys letting me be on the show.
No, it's our pleasure, man. We'll talk to you real soon. Thank you, Richard.
Yep, have a good one.
All right, we're at the point of the show right now where it's one of our favorite parts. We get to take live customer questions. Sometimes we're going to do it on the phone. Sometimes we're going to do it via email. Usually, just so you guys understand the format, the episodes where we don't have a live interview scheduled, we're going to be taking the calls from the fans and customers. This time we had a nice interview with Richard. So, Adam, I believe you have a bunch of questions from the fans.
Yes, I do. So let's get started with that. First question is from Matt, and he wants to know what's the best tape to use to get good lines and do especially those curved lines.
Yeah, that's actually a really easy answer. We have 2 different types of tape on DipYourCar.com that you can use. There's a lot of different types of tape out there. I'm not saying that the only types of tape that will work are found at DipYourCar, but we do have 2 different types that will work. You're going to see the 2-inch or a little bit less than 2-inch blue painter's tape. That's going to be your general surface area tape, where you're going to be trying to cover surface area like the front of headlights, front of taillights, different sections like that. And then we have what we call our edge work tape, which is that 3/4 inch yellow 3M automotive masking tape. It's very flexible, it's got a very sharp edge to it, and it's got a great adhesive. So when you actually watch the videos, and sometimes you'll see those teaser pictures that we put out right before we actually put the video up, or before we actually film the video, you're going to see a combination of different colored tapes on the car. You're going to see the blue covering surface area, you're going to see that yellow tape doing the edge work. So I would really try to focus on using a yellow tape like that, an edge work tape, and it's perfect for those curved lines.
All right, thanks. The next question would be from Ead. He asks, and we do get this question quite a bit, is there ever going to be a pre-mixed combination of our matte clear and our glossifier in gallon form for to make that mixture for the pearls easier to spray?
That's a very easy answer. If you're asking me specifically, is there going to be a pre-mixed gallon of glossifier and matte clear for pearl use? And I'm going to say probably not. If you're asking me, is there going to be an all-in-one gallon that I can use as a pearl top coat and as maybe even a gloss top coat, the answer is going to be yes.
All right. Next question is from Jeff, and he wants to know, are we going to bring back the Jetta Sport Wagon back into the rotation for dipping? You know, people ask all the time where we get our vehicles to dip, and he wanted to know if that vehicle would be back because he wants to see the detail on how to get good clean lines when leaving like the roof black because of the the drip rails.
For people who don't know, that Jetta Sport Wagon is owned by our graphics and media manager, Jared. And Jared is a very interesting character. He's an awesome guy. He's very good at his job. He's a very quirky dude. He's very color specific. So I think when we find another color that's perfect for Jared's car, I think you're going to see that again in the video. However, there have been rumors for the past basically 10 years that Jared's going to be getting a new car. So if he does get a new car, that may be the last time you see that Sport Wagon. However, to go back to the roof rail thing, the SQ5, the Audi SQ5 SUV that we just added to the DYC lineup has those roof rails, and we are dipping that this coming Friday, I believe, and we're going to show how to mask those off.
All right, so we're going to have a lot of people probably looking forward to that because not only is it a larger vehicle, but it has some of those pieces that Jeff wants to see.
Yes.
All right, so Tracy asked the next question, and she was dipping her wheels not too long ago, and she used no masking, and she wanted to know that when she oversprays on the tires, she's having some issues, even though she used the proper amount of coats to make the product peelable. She wanted to know if there's going to be any products, or are there any products to remove that what seems like unpeelable dip from the tires.
Yeah, when you actually go ahead and dip your wheels, a lot of people are obviously doing it with the tires still mounted on the wheel. And what you're going to see is if your tire is moisturized, if it's a tire that's got some good moisture to it, it's tire shine is used often, something like that, to keep it nice and supple. The dip is going to release and pop off of it almost immediately, very easily, all in one piece. However, if your tires are dry and they're not maintained well, that dip is going to stick to it, and even with a good amount of coats, it's going to give you a real tough time to get it off. So here's what I'll say, and this is two-part. First of all, if you're going to be dipping your wheels, it's always a really good idea to take a tire shine, a dip-safe tire shine, and put a very light application of that tire shine on the tire section. You have to be super careful not to let that tire shine touch the edge of the wheel, because if it touches the edge of the wheel, you're going to get lifting on that edge and you're going to have to respray that wheel. What I will say, though, for the second piece is that we have identified a very inexpensive, very dip-safe tire-type lubricant. It's going to be called the Dip Release, and you're going to see it, a little 2-ounce bottle of it in the future, included in wheel kits. So you know how you're going to have standard wheel kits, and then you have the Wheel Kit Plus that has the accessories. In the Wheel Kit Plus moving forward, and I don't have a date for this yet, but you're going to have a little 2-ounce bottle of the Dip Release in those wheel kits for everybody. And we're going to do a video out there and show everybody how to apply it, and apply it carefully, and then you're never going to have that issue again as far as removing that dip off the tire.
Would you say that would kind of almost eliminate having to tape off those sections of the wheels, or?
I think that with the Dip Release and the general knowledge of the ability to use a dip-safe tire shine, I think you're going to see less and less people taping the tire or even using those index cards around the tire. It's going to be a lot easier to just put a very thin application of this material on it and then just have the Dip Release right off very easily.
All right, awesome. And then our last question of the night is from Rob, and he actually wants to know what your dream car, if you could have any car that you wanted, regardless of cost, what would it be, and what color would you dip it? And he actually asked both you and I this question. So do you want to go first, or?
Yeah, I'll go first. And that's a loaded question to ask a car guy. And I think everybody out there knows that I'm definitely a car guy. This is, one of my passions. And to pick one car would be really difficult. And, I think a lot of people are going to expect me to pick some $1 million exotic car. And I'm probably going to disappoint a lot of people because they know I'm an Audi guy. My choice would be a 2009 Audi C6 RS6 sedan. V10 twin-turbo sedan. I would dip it storm cloud gray with probably the new gloss coat on it, obviously, and full exhaust and tune, and that would be my bread and butter right there.
That's pretty specific right there.
Well, I mean, and that's a car that I can't get. They don't make it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They do make an RS6. It's only in Europe, but that car was only available for a very short time, and it was not in the United States. So that would be a rare bird that I would like to get my hands on.
All right. Well, I'm the exact opposite. I'm not a huge car buff. I'll mention this to people on the phone all the time. I like cars. I'm more a classic type guy. I'm not, the guy that's necessarily driving around in the Chameleon or something like that. I like something a little bit more subtle. I would say probably like a classic Jag, not something too sporty, and I would go with something very simple. Probably maybe anthracite gray, maybe the storm cloud, maybe a camo green. I know that some of the Jags had a nice soft green before back in the day, so I think maybe the camo green.
So you're a Jag guy?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, beautiful. And we also have our sound engineer, Dan, here in the studio as well, and we might as well throw that question his way. So if you could get any dream car, what would you get?
Well, I'm kind of like Adam. I'm not a huge car buff, but I'm definitely partial to the muscle cars, specifically like 60s, 70s era. So I'd probably take like any late 60s muscle car, maybe a Mustang, but right now, honestly, if you gave me money and said any car, I would definitely say the Hellcat right now.
That's a big bold move right there.
What color would you dip it?
To be honest with you, I would probably go something really, really flashy on that.
Of course you would.
I would honestly, the craziest pearl that we have, the craziest chameleon pearl probably out there, I would definitely do that. Maybe something like the Cobra, or maybe even Flash on that, because Flash is just sick.
Yeah, that's definitely a good move right there.
And it's so funny because that's the exact opposite of your personality.
Yeah, absolutely.
As he sits here in khaki pants, a tucked-in polo shirt, an undershirt, and his hair brushed over to the side. I think that pretty much is going to wrap up episode 2 of the DipCast. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that was a good second episode, and I'm looking forward to episode number 3.
Yeah, actually, in episode 3 next week, we're going to be covering some practical things. Like we're going to bring in our shop manager, Gabe. He's the guy that actually physically cleans and maintains all of the DYC dip sprayers that we use in the shop for all of our videos and all of our testing. So I know that we covered the kind of the troubleshooting and general maintenance of that gun in the video. that we did for the Ehrlich's gun. But there's some things that he does with those guns. There's some very specific things that you can run into more on a technical standpoint, some do's and don'ts, stuff like that he's going to cover, because he's the guy that touches those. And we've been using the same 3 Ehrlich's plastic guns for going on 9 months now. So if he can maintain those and keep them the way that they are and in full functional usage, there's definitely people out there that want to know what he's doing with them. And I think as well we should have an air date for the TV show that I filmed up in Tennessee that's going to be airing on the Velocity Network. So we should have an air date for that next week as well.
And also remember, when we do the launch or the teaser about an upcoming episode for episode 3, where Fonzie mentions to send your questions over to me at Adam@DipYourCar, we got, I would say, 5 times the amount of questions this week than we got last week. So it's obviously you guys are listening in. You guys have questions that maybe we didn't touch on this week or last week. Maybe we'll touch on them next week. If you have questions, make sure you get them over to me, DipCast in the subject line. If we don't touch on it during that actual show, we might touch on it further down the line. I'll be in constant communication, and I'll definitely thank you for those questions. Send those up. Keep them coming.
Yeah, we definitely take those seriously. We want to try to get the people from the community as involved as possible. And hopefully next week, because we're going to have an in-house interview, we won't have a phone interview. Hopefully next week will be the first time we get some listeners live on the air with us as well. So that's pretty much going to wrap up episode 2 for the DipCast. This is Fonzie from Dip Your Car, and Adam. We'll see you on the next one.